So we just released the new Fide context protocol. It's a standard we believe will finally make messy data structured for agents. It breaks every single statement in a graph into three parts: the subject, the property, and the object. It defines when to use these parts, and also that statements can be either symmetrical, so they go both ways, or they can be directional. Fide context protocol also defines two primitives, both for how we identify entities in the graph and also what types they have. Every entity in the graph has an identifier called a Fide ID. It starts with a prefix saying that it is DID compliant and is internationally recognized. Next is the entity type code. This is a code that tells us what type of entity we're talking about, and we'll give some examples soon. The reference identifier is a unique string of text that identifies the entity itself. It should be unique to that entity, as long as we know the type. And the reference type code just tells us what type of reference identifier we used. And finally, the Fide ID always ends with what we call the fingerprint. It's calculated from the reference identifier itself. Let's go through an example to see how this works in practice. Say we want to represent the number 100. That is its own reference identifier. We use that to calculate the fingerprint first. Then we know that this reference identifier is itself an integer, and that we're trying to represent an integer, so a literal integer. That's how this Fide ID is created. Let's say we want to represent a statement. We put together all the Fide IDs in a statement, so the subject, the property, and the object. We use that to calculate a fingerprint. We know that we used a reference identifier that is of a statement, and we're also representing a statement. So these have been pretty simple examples so far. Let's say I wanted to represent myself. I could use my X profile URL, calculate the fingerprint. I know that this is a network resource that I'm using, and I'm trying to represent myself, so a person. This could be used to answer questions like Chris lives in Boston. But what if I wanted to use that same URL, but talk about the account itself, not me as a person? I wanted to say that the account was created in February of 2012. In this case, I would actually use platform account as the entity type, so only 2 digits would change. But this is a completely different Fide ID. And in one final example, let's say that we actually want to talk about the network resource, so what actually lives at this URL. And maybe we want to make a statement saying that the resource loaded in 2 seconds. Hopefully this shows you an identifier like a URL of a profile can be used for many different entities in a Fide graph. All that has to change is the actual entity itself, but the fingerprint can stay the same. We could have the same person in 2 graphs, and yes, we can combine those together. This is one of the most powerful aspects of the Fide context protocol. It helps get us closer to what we might consider a world model or a company brain. The Fide context protocol and its primitives are completely open source. You can find the Apache licenses and help contribute back to them at github.com/Fide. You can also find our NPM packages and integrate the Fide context protocol into your own applications. Head on over to fide.work to get started making messy data structured for agents.